Okay, so one of the things that I talk about is the box. And this is a major problem with any school system that's out there. Now, they try to deal with the box in different ways, but let me first describe to you what the box is. Right here, I have a box, and I have 10 kids in the box. Now, you have one teacher who's teaching to everybody. Okay, so they may be up here, and they are teaching to everybody. Everybody's getting the same lesson. Now, some of these kids will get it, and some of them will not, right? Just a normal distribution. Maybe different people communicate in different ways. But the way that we try to address this currently is we try to change up the teaching model so that different kids can get it their own way. And that's not a bad idea. But, right, you have one teacher, you got 10 kids, right? This seems like a pretty good ratio. So what happens? They teach all these kids. Now, all these kids, let's say it's math, right, might be going at a different speedometer, right? So they might be going at different rates, right, of learning math. Some kids get it, and they're moving, let's say, at 100 miles an hour, right, to use a car analogy. Other kids, no one's not going to get it completely, but let's say that the bottom end is down here at 0 miles per hour. They're completely stopped, right? Now, she's teaching to all these kids. Some kids get it, some kids don't, right? And what happens is this suddenly turns into like a one-lane highway, right? Where everybody's going this direction. I'll draw that a little bit clearer down here, right? Now, you can imagine this as like a one-lane road that you're driving on. If you're driving and your pace is 50 miles an hour, but you're behind a tractor that's going 35, then you will become bored in your car. You will have some issues, right? And we see that here, right? Some kids get it, and they're going at 90 miles an hour, and another one may be going at 60 miles an hour. Another kid may be getting it at 20, right? Another at 10, right? Another at 99, right? And then 50, 40, 30, say 70, and 80, right? Now, you see all these different people going different speeds at getting the information and being able to consume it. Now, this is due to the fact that we consume information passively through our environments. If you have parents who are accountants, or your family enjoys doing math, maybe you have a home math game that you end up doing, maybe there's some extra learning going on, their speed is going to be greater than some other kid who may not be exposed to math at the same rate. But the teacher teaches a lesson to these kids. Some kids get it, right? And a lot of them get it. Now, the reality is that we could say that maybe like 4 of these kids, right, are in no need of this lesson plan. Maybe even 5, right? We could say that the person who's 60, 70, 80, 90, and this person who's 99 over here don't really need the lesson plan, right? So this is kind of waste for her to be addressing these kids, right? So those kids right there, they would have gotten the lesson plan anyway. Now, behaviorally, they're going to cause some problems in class because they are bored, right? Now, the lesson plan may really cater to these people right here, these people that are 50, 40, and 30, right? That might be right at their pace. So they're engaged in that lesson plan. Now, the 10 and 20 individuals, they don't get it. They need help, right? And in all likelihood, they're going to need help from the teacher. That's going to require more attention. So what's going to happen is that instead of setting up more stuff for these other kids who just get it, who can go on, they're now ahead, and then they just sit and they're bored, right? Then you have the other kids who kind of get it, and they're going to move on at their own pace. They're not going to have behavioral problems because they're going to be able to do the rate of work to get to the destination that the teacher is wanting them to get to. And then the other kids are going to need help to speed up, okay? Now, since this is the one teacher with the one resources, right, then what happens is that these other kids get held back by the front of the box. Just the same way as when you're in a traffic jam, you can't go any faster than the people ahead of you. But at the same time, the people at the back of the box, if they're pulling at the back of the box because they need help, the teacher is the box. She only lets kids go as far as she can manage in here. She's not going to give the kid who's going at 90 or 99 miles an hour more content to do, because she's developed a lesson plan that caters so that everybody's moving at the same pace. Everybody's together. They're all a team. They're all a class, right? Now, there's some schools that do different things in different ways, where they may take a kid who has a 90 in that class and they help out the kid who has a 10, and this 99 helps out the 20, and you move the box forward faster, but it's still a whole box. Everybody completes the same lesson plan in that day, right? Some schools, their solution to this is to split the box between the kids who get it and who don't get it. And maybe they have more content over here, but you see what they did. They split it into two smaller boxes. So these kids may be able to move faster forward, but they're still confined in a box. Now, this doubles the work for the teacher, because now she has to develop two separate lesson plans to be able to cater to both groups. So it's not a very good idea. Now, the kids at the back of the box, they tend to shut down, right, and cause behavioral problems. The kids at the front of the box tend to get bored, and so what happens is they end up having behavioral problems as well. And then they come and see me, a therapist. Okay. So what is our solution to this, right? Now, if we were to keep with the road analogy, right? Instead of having the lane go this way and you're stuck in traffic, right? What we want to do is we want to use technology and resources to remove the box. Now, we're going to put the teacher over here, right? Now, let's say that instead of having the road go this way, we now have the road go this way, right? Each one of these kids now has their own lane. Now, that's a super highway. You have 10 kids, 10 lanes, all going at their own pace. Now, how do you do that, right? Well, we have a ton of content. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Khan Academy, SAS pathways, different math learning module books and everything else. We can have kids learning at their own rate. There's no reason that we should keep them in the box. The reality is that the kid who is going 99 will be right here, right? The kid that's 10 is going to be right here. Now, like, if we see different people going along at their different paces, right, you can see that some kids are going to be further behind than some other kids who are not, right? So what happens is that we can then fix this situation where the kids are behind, are not going at pace, by giving them an individual teacher. Now imagine if you were on the highway and instead of the people who are speeding getting pulled over, that we had the teacher being the cop who ends up speeding up the areas that need it. Right? So there, she's able to boost their consumption to a level that they need to be at. So let's say that they need to be going at 30 miles an hour to be able to keep up with the pace of content for that year, right? Well, then we'll fill it in, right? The teacher will come and individually help whenever somebody gets stuck. This means that kids who are going at 99 miles an hour for math are not held back by other people, and they could move on progressively as far as they would like to. That way they could get onto, let's say if there was a first grader, they could get on to second grade or third grade math in that first grade year. And every time they got stuck, the teacher could come and help them additionally, right? But we're no longer having the teacher produce that content or trying to produce two contents that is the box. We have different kids moving at different rates that caters to them. And that way, you would have no kid that's competing with another kid. Everybody's doing their own individual thing, because the kid who might be doing 99 miles an hour here may only be doing 10 miles an hour in social studies. But his ability to move forward here, right, helps him make a better utilization of his time and resources so that he's moving beyond, right, the capacity of what would have been the box before. He's no longer stuck behind somebody else. It's a super highway for him. Now, like, we look at this and we say, you know, this teacher is going to be helping these people, right? And we say that this person's moving at a rate to where they might get stuck on third grade math. Do we want the teacher helping out that student? Yes, we do. The reality is that most kids are going to be moving along and they're going to be able to figure it out on their own. Fine. So we're going to say that like 30 to 60 mile an hour people are just going to continue to move along. And just the same, 70 to the 99 mile an hour people, they may get stuck for a little bit, but most of the time they'll be able to figure it out on their own if we supply the right resources. So let's say that every time the teacher comes and helps this kid who is going at 10 miles an hour and they get stuck. Well, what did they get stuck on? What content do we need to fill in that gap in the road? Right? If we were to look at it as a crack in the road, right, the teacher is not there just to help that one kid over this one crack. What she's there to is learn about where the crack is and then fix it. So she's going to put resources into here so that if another kid comes along and says, I get stuck on this thing, I'm confused, right? Then the teacher would say, try this content that I used to fill in this gap so that it's not there. And then if the kid gets it, then once again, he moves on and you don't need the teacher's resources anymore. You don't need that. It'll be fine, right? And if the kid gets stuck anyway and that content didn't help them, right, then the teacher comes back, identifies the new gap, and creates more content that helps fill that in. So just the same way as before, you had teachers trying to teach in different ways to be able to communicate with different kids about the way to learn a certain way to do a math problem or function. We have the teacher creating different types of content to be able to address the same question so that every time the road gets more and more solid. There's less and less gaps because the teacher is actually filling them in proactively. So if she helps the kid who's moving at 99 miles an hour, who's now in third grade math, even though they're in first grade, and they come across a gap, and that teacher comes over here and helps them with that gap, then everybody behind this kid now has content that will help them bridge that gap as well, because that gap is no longer there. It's progressive. Every time somebody travels down this road, the road gets stronger and stronger and stronger. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not having a box where we have the same questions asked by the same kids every year. Every year currently in that box, since the teacher's resources are just stretched way too thin for the way that the system is set up, what's happening is that whatever the gaps may be in the learning, the teacher may become better at explaining the ways to fill in those gaps individually. But what she's not doing is she's not creating a good content lesson plan that is preventative. And so what happens is every year she's reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. And so this gap that this kid may hit in first grade, the next year the next set of first graders will hit the same gap. Right? So this way we maximize the teacher's resources. So every year she's needed a little less and less. Right? But she's only there for specialized issues. This is how we end up paying a teacher a lot more, because we're having her deal with specific issues and not trying to create content for a box, because a box is there to try to make sure that everybody is on the same page and they're all moving together at the same rate, even though everybody is vastly different. Some people get stuff faster than others in one course or subject, and other kids get another thing better in another subject. So this is what we call multilaning. Right? Now, multilaning gets a little bit more complicated. Right? Let's say that that kid who is going 10 miles an hour in math, right, gets stuck on a math question, right? Right? What happens? Right? Do we want that kid sitting there doing nothing while they're waiting for the teacher. No, let's say that that was a particularly interesting day where multiple kids needed help, right? Maybe it only took 5 minutes for the teacher to help each individual kid, but let's say that everybody in the class needed help, right, at different things. So the 10-mile-an-hour kid, let's say that, she's out there helping everybody else, and that teacher's not going to get to them in, let's say, 30 minutes, right? You don't want to have the kid sitting there doing nothing for 30 minutes. Now, let's take the multi-lane, right? And instead of just imagining that you had one lane for you where you could move fast as you wanted to for your subject, for math, right? Instead of just having one lane for you, imagine if you had 8, right? So this is a massive superhighway. Because now, instead of just having one lane, right, what we have is we actually have 8 lanes for every kid. Right? Now, why would we need 8 lanes for every kid? What are the other lanes? Right? Well, if you get stuck on something, right, let's say that there was like a branch in the road, but you were on a massive highway, and it only took up one of those roads, one of those lanes, right? What would you do? Let's say this was the math lane, and like we said, what if this kid was a 99 mile an hour in social studies? Why not have this person move over and go 99 miles an hour in social studies while they're waiting for the teacher to come over to help them in math? Okay, so now you don't even need me to fill in the blanks on what these other lanes are, right? These are science, right? Social studies, reading, right? Art, reading, social studies, science, right? Then we could also come up with other subjects that would help them in the future, right? Like budgeting, right? Social work, right? Education. What if we had kids who were good in social studies help create content for other kids who aren't good in social studies, right? That advantage that we said that was the possibility where we had that one kid who could go and help the other kid in math who's a 99 who could go help the 10, or maybe the 90 who could go help the 10 and the 99 who could go help the 20. What if they did that, but they did it in terms of content? Then they're helping any other kid, and they're helping the teacher once again fill in more gaps. You're actually using kids to fill in the gaps for other kids, and you're not just doing it where one kid is helping out another face to face, but it could be that level where it's like, hey, I don't get it. Here's a level of content that another kid has created to help explain it. They helped explain it, and then, right, the teacher approves that and everything else, and maybe that's something else that takes extra work off the teacher. But you see how no matter what the blockage in the road is, right, they could go to any other place, right? Maybe get around one thing or another. That's probably too complex for right now. But if we were to say that like they had different blockages in the road, they could always go in any lane, right? And you could relate to that. Let's say there was just a storm and you had a lot of things that were blocking your way in any different lane. But if you had 8 lanes, what's the likelihood that you'd be able to find something that could help you move forward? Because of that, we don't inhibit them. The reality is that they can move forward in so many different subjects, right, that they're not bored. And if they're not bored, they're not doing the behavioral problems. And if they're not feeling dumb because they're moving at their own rate, they're not causing problems. They're just asking for help occasionally. And when that happens, they have the resources to try it out, and then they then eventually can request the teacher. And so let's say the teacher becomes available later, right? Then what happens is that the kid may be moving on in social studies. They may be way up here, but the teacher now has come back around here, removes the block, helps the kid start to move forward in math again, and the kid puts more time in that lane, moving forward constantly. So this is the Atlantis educational system's solution to the box, to help kids always move forward in education in a multitude of different fields, to maximize their time so that they're using their resources to move forward, feel empowered, right? And to get individual help when they need it, so that they're maximizing their time to be able to get the most education out of the time that they're spending doing educational things, right? Now, in each day, they might be required to do some art, some social studies, some science, and that's fine, right? The reality is that, you know, we want them spending about 30 minutes in each one of these major subjects, right? Because they're utilizing their time so much better. They don't need to spend an entire hour in the subject. And research shows that like kids who have ADD have shorter attention spans, but it's still about 40 minutes. So the reality is that what we would see is that their utilization of time would make them move at a lot faster pace than somebody who's confined by the box. Because in the box, they're only utilizing really about 15 minutes. Because even the kids who get it and they know it and they can move fast, as fast forward as they wanted to, what happens, right? They're still confined by the box and by the lesson plan on the other kids. Another solution that the school system has is they may take that kid who's really good at math, and they're like, okay, they're really good at math. Our solution is to move them to another box with older kids who may get it, who may not get it, who are, let's say, if this is a first grader, this is an 8-year-old, and this is a 6-year-old. Emotionally, what is the emotional experience that we're getting from that? This kid may shut himself down because he's like, what happened to all my friends? I was around all my friends, and now I'm up at this math, and I'm smart, and these kids who don't get it, who are much older than me, really don't like me now. They really don't like me. Something that's hard for them is easy for me, and they see that it's easy for me. Good. Right? Social isolation. This is a major problem. Right? This is not a good solution to the box, but this is what schools tell. Oh, we're gonna move them up a grade. No. Emotionally, that's not good. We don't want that kid up there, because then the other kids who were left behind, right? Like, where are they? This person is now not around them, right? They're different, right? They can see the competition, you know, apparently in the system, and they're like, well, Jimmy's smart at math, right? He's a nerd. He can go up there. And then these people are like, well, he's a nerd. He's isolated, right? Do we want to isolate kids who are better at stuff? No. Why is how well they do math impacting their social relationships? So our goal, first and foremost, right, for our time in a curriculum is to eliminate the box and help them learn independently. Our major first steps for kindergarten to first grade are to create an ability to read and be able to consume information, and then expose them to different information that is age appropriate, which is already there. It's already out there. We're not reinventing the wheel. To have them be able to move at their own pace, and everybody moves at their own pace, right? And so they're not competing. We're also not dealing with grades either, because if a kid gets a 9 out of 10 on a math test, you might be thinking, that's great. But what if that 10% is a fatal flaw? What if they don't get something? Well, for us, they just continue to do it until they get it, and they don't move forward until they've gotten a 100 on that. And so they just keep going. But you see how that would actually eliminate failure, right? Failure's not an option anymore. You get a 20 out of 10 on a test, what do? Right? You retake it until you get it and you move on. That makes sense, right? Right? Why would we want to just be like, you failed, we're moving on? Well, because if you're relying on the box, right? I don't have the resources to help this kid anymore. So if they fail, right? Let's say that we're going to get rid of the age, right? If they fail, then they fall out of the box. We've given up on them. And we give up on a lot of kids every year, right? And they may be dropped down to like remedial help, and they're made to feel dumb, and like the grade just kind of shuts them down. The reality is, shouldn't we do it until they get it? Shouldn't we just keep going until they get it, right? Now, the danger is, what about that kid who got the 90 out of 10? We're like, you got an A, good job, you're moving on, you're great, right? Except that what happens, right? They move on to the next year, they get an 80 out of 10. The next year, 70 out of 10, right? The next year, 60 out of 10. And then they come and see me. They were great at math, what happened? Well, they just didn't understand one part, and that was a gap in the system. And then what happened was is that instead of having that teacher who came around and filled in that gap, that stick in the road, right, who could have fixed that stick, what happened, right? That kid ran over that stick, had some damage, right? And we're not until 3 years down the road that we determine that that damage is cumulative. And math is a really great example of that. If you don't get the fundamentals of math, then it makes it progressively harder, which is why a lot of kids, when they go to tutoring, what happens? They end up starting over. And they walk through the easy stuff until they get to the harder stuff to be able to find out, hey, oh, the problem was in second grade, right? And we filled that in, and now they actually are better in fifth grade. So one of the most damaging and structural issues with school is the box. Every class is set up with this way, and it's been set up that way as long as I have ever known it, right? The kids back in the day who used to go to a school farm, they had one school, the one school building, that was a box, right? Now we got a bunch of boxes connected. We got more kids in the box. So you can imagine, the more kids we have in the box, the bigger the problem the box has. But instead of addressing the box, what do? Right? They keep tweaking the box, putting more pressure on the teacher, right? And if the teacher can't get all the content out to the box because there's such diversity amongst the people and where they're at in that subject, at that specific lesson plan, that she has to give homework. There's no way around it, right? To keep everybody up to pace, right? She has to give, and she'll give the kid who gets it and the kid who doesn't get it all the same homework. Why? If the kid gets it, why does he need the homework? Now he's doing busy work and he is lying to his parents because he didn't do it. And then he fails math, not because he doesn't get it, but because he doesn't want to do the homework, which he gets zeros on, but he rocks the test. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Because this box does provide some control. Multilaning seems scary, right? Having a lot of people going at different paces on highways seems scary, but it's not. It's not scary, right? Giving people options where they have multiple lanes, right, to be able to excel allows them to focus on different things that they're good at and move progressively faster toward it. Then when they choose to go into a career in, let's say, social studies, right, where they want to go into law or the judicial system, which is the same thing. But let's say that they want to go in that direction, then every time that they got stuck, they moved further in that direction. So in middle school and in high school, right, for the Atlantis education system, they are actually in that chosen career field. So the box, right, is a structural issue with all school systems, even the really nice schools, right? They just reduce the number of people in the box. They give special tools for the box, but they still cater to the box, which is why I had to start my own school, because there isn't another school that gets rid of the box. They just don't. They have more resources to help individual kids in the box. They may have teachers and a teacher's assistant helping out, but every year they still reinvent the wheel. They still have the box, right? They don't have kids learning independently. And we'll talk about how that's actually set up different in the future. So for us, we do multi-lane. Multi-lane, letting everybody move at their own pace for each subject, being able to choose the time when they want to work on that subject. We give them the other options in case they get stuck. We set up a system for them to get individualized help when the teacher is available so that she can give them the one-on-one undivided attention. And we focus on being able to make progress in multiple subjects so that the kid, any kid, has the ability to move forward at their pace and maximize their potential based on their rate of consumption. So it's a logical fix to a institutionalized problem. So this is the box. This is our first part on what's wrong and how the Atlantis education system is different than the traditional education system. even the private education system, even with STEM, right? Like STEM is great, but they'll get up and they'll go work on something else, but they're like, you were in the box and now you leave the box to go do one thing and then you come back to the box. They're just putting their toe in the water of multilaning, right? They're not embracing it. Okay? All right, so that's where we'll stop for the box.